The economy is doing dreadfully badly.
Tory MPs keen to hear about tax cuts.
There's been weeks of briefing about a possible cut to inheritance tax.
It's very difficult to see having that kind of tax cut this year.
Unemployed who refuse jobs will lose their benefits, says Jeremy Hunt.
Welcome back to Punk Politics. I'm Mae Thompson. It's autumn statement time again, guys, or thanks-taking, as we shall now refer to it. It's a yearly festival, usually in early November, where a millionaire steps up and tells us how we all need to live more meagre. Now, I'm always suspicious of when people ask me to do more with less. You've got to live more humbly, eh? I don't care if it's the King, the Chancellor, or Jesus Christ himself. If someone's telling you to live more humbly, they're probably trying to rob you. Anyway, yes, it's that time of year again. Autumn statement has arrived once more, like a sort of cross between Santa and the Grim Reaper. Santa, because everyone writes to the Chancellor and sort of tells him what they're after.
Jeremy Hunt knows what he should do with the autumn statement.
Conservatives, Jeremy Hunt. And the Grim Reaper, because, well, Santa isn't real. And, well, you know, the job of the Chancellor these days is to be a sort of harbinger of death, isn't it? Look, I'm sorry, we would love to keep your Aunt Tina alive and give her the welfare payments that she needs, but there's just not enough money. Oh, okay, I mean, like, can't we use some of the 8 billion from inheritance tax, no? No. We sacked that off because the economy has turned a corner. Right, well now I'm confused. Like, I don't know if you guys noticed it, but we have sort of moved into this period of paradox now. It's one where the brighter future Tories...
AI will bring new knowledge, new opportunities for economic growth, new advances in human capability.
seem actually quite happy to regress to sort of Victorian social attitudes. It's like, only the Conservative Party will advance you into the 21st century's most innovative debtor prisons. Like, do you want us to move forward with your Elon Musk interviews and AI warnings? Or are you happy for us to regress back to the living standards of the late 19th century? You know, I am, as ever, all ears, Rishi. You gotta pick a decade. You're not Sam Beckett. Oh, wait, I'm a detached boy toy husband with an empathy problem? Whoa, boy. No, I mean, in terms of, futurism and then regressing back to Victorian lifestyles, like, they're not quite at debtor prisons just yet, though that is probably just a capacity issue. But we do have ministers, MPs, radio phone-in hosts, plus the usual supporting cast coterie of coin-op all the way across print media, recoiling in horror at the mere mention of inheritance tax. I don't like it. It's an immoral tax and it's got to go.
And ultimately, it's about what inheritance tax represents. I think that's wrong morally.
Some people simply think it's immoral.
It's immoral, guys. And so immoral, they want it gone. And they're willing to rob poor people of their medicine to make that happen.
Rumoured reported inheritance tax cuts and more sanctions on long-term unemployed, on coasters, as you put them.
Unemployed who refuse jobs will lose their benefits, says Jeremy Hunt.
Unbelievable. It's like, you don't need that insulin, do you? You lazy puffer. Well, I'll probably slip into a coma by lunchtime without it. Oh, right. Okay, well, look, here's the thing. I'm going to have to take that off you to pay for this tax cut because the tax is immoral. Right. I mean, I think taking my medicine off me to pay for that would, that wouldn't feel right to me. No, nonsense. Like, if you should die to remove this immoral tax over here, then yours was an honourable death, you filthy, stinking puffer. Like, aren't we playing it a bit fast and loose with all the talk about what's moral, you know?
It's immoral.
And it's not just the current cabinet who are cheering this on, of course. Former Prime Minister and horny albino yeti Boris Johnson ejacked his weekly Mail column out over the weekend to say,
"Listen up, folks. As a paragon of moral virtue, it's down to me to say this. Inheritance tax needs to go. Inheritance is wonderful. I'm a big fan of it. I'm such a big fan, in fact, that I want my kids to inherit your money."
I'm kidding. But somehow what he actually said was more ridiculous. Baby boomers like me have had it so good, and that's why it's right to cut inheritance tax to let us give a helping hand to Gen Z and millennials. I'm sorry, what? But baby boomers like me? You were born in 64, you bellend! That's almost 20 years after the baby boom period started. That's like me, born in 1980, taking pity on the indie kids, like, yeah, I'm sorry you got stuck with Pulp and Shed 7 boys, but us 60s kid had it so good. Like, wouldn't you be like, yeah, I don't really want to hang out with Aid anymore. He's a bit weird. Because it is a bit weird, isn't it? It's like, what is he? It's like 20 years, like pick a decade. You're not Sam Beck. Wait, no, hang on, I already did that. But like, what is he trying to do by calling himself a boomer? Make some new friends? Or, appeal to an older demographic? It's no good trying to ingratiate yourself with people in their 80s, Bozza. You already killed them all, remember? Give a helping hand to Gen Z and millennials. Johnson's new inclination is a refreshing pivot for someone whose previous efforts at helping the young rank just beneath a paedophile. Or maybe just above one. I mean, you know, for all their faults, I'm guessing paedophiles probably do maintain contact with their kid. Wait, no, this is getting weird now. But like, I'm not messing about. Like, if we are to look at his CV, his track record of helping the young, it is laughable. It tops out at like, what, like making it harder for us to vote. He took away our freedom of movement. He jacked up our taxes. He demonized work from home. Tuition fees soared. The housing crisis ran riot on his watch. So yeah, I don't know, like maybe it is just sort of refreshing to see him suddenly care about youngsters now. I mean, you know, but better late than never, perhaps. We've got to cut inheritance tax to give a helping hand to Gen Z. We've got to, guys. I love that. We have to. We haven't got any other option. No, I'm serious. Like every other time I've tried to help somebody under 35, I've ended up either impregnating them or giving them a peerage.
Of Baroness Owen of Alderley Edge.
So we've got to try something else. Like, isn't anyone around him like, you were the f***ing Prime Minister. You seriously have no other ideas for how to help the up-and-coming generation? Well, my other tactic is to just, refuse to acknowledge them. Right, yeah. Stick to what you're good at, I guess. Anyway, Tories looking after rich people's estates aside, the autumn statement is here, and it is a sort of fiscal checkpoint where the Chancellor, following the budget in March, comes back to Parliament to report on the state of the economy, the governing party's policies, and, maybe make some very minor tweaks. But don't worry, if all of that sounds boring, rest assured it is also a fantastic opportunity to take credit for things you played absolutely no part in. You need to look out for that. The taking credit for things you played no role in whatsoever. It's very much the parliamentary equivalent of your mate Billy in the pub, like, we beat you, son, 3-0, we beat ya. Billy, what is all this we stuff? you what? Well, you're saying we beat you, like, what did you do? Now, chancellors and prime ministers, they don't really care about football and football teams, of course.
Where you can support Man United, the Windies, and Team GB all at the same time. Of course, I'd rather you supported West Ham. That's why I became a Villa. That's why I became a Villa fan, because of. I really can't explain what happened. I'd been past West Ham the day before. Maybe that was what okay, but I can't understand it.
Boris Johnson refuses to condemn fans booing England taking the knee.
So when it comes to taking credit, they either sell bonds, you know, because then it's borrowing money, right? So it's like taking credit, you know? It's credit that they're taking.
Well, that's supposed to be an actual joke.
What? I thought it was funny.
Just get on with it. I want to get back to Mikey Graham.
Right. Well, anyway, look, when it comes to taking credit, forget football. It's all about inflation coming down and how they've been very successful at that.
We will halve inflation this year.
Like, we've got to keep getting inflation down, because even once it's halved, that's not enough. We've got to get it all the way back down to 2%.
One of his 5 targets that he wanted to hit.
Because inflation is now down to under 5%. And that means things are still getting more expensive, just at half the rate they were when the energy bills first exploded. But in terms of the timeline of that inflation, the Bank of England have always said they expected inflation to tumble in the second half of this year, mostly due to global energy markets beginning to stabilise after all of the, Ukraine business. So it's completely disconnected from anything that Hunt or Sunak have been doing. But of course, that didn't stop the Prime Minister from making halving inflation one of his key 5 pledges.
We will halve inflation this year.
Like, we've got to keep getting inflation down.
The best tax cut that I can deliver for the British people right now is to halve inflation.
Halve inflation.
Now that inflation has fallen, like the Bank of England said that it would, then yeah, no surprises for the last week. Both of them have been like, in January, I made halving inflation this year my top priority, and today we have delivered on that pledge. We are beginning to win the battle against inflation. What did you do? I saw both of those and I was like, look, can somebody just explain to me, just calmly, like forget the satire, forget the snark, can somebody just explain to me very clearly what it is that those two did, if anything, to bring down inflation? Could anyone explain that to me, please? Like, if you want to read on how ridiculous this is, in 2022, when energy prices rocketed, Sunak, Truss, Johnson, Raab, Cleverly, they all said inflation was down to global factors. Like, it was way outside of their control. Do you remember that?
Well, inflation is a global problem.
Inflation is a global phenomenon.
Down to global factors.
The rise in inflation and interest rates is the global phenomenon.
So they couldn't do But now that those global factors have settled, wholly due to variables and machinations that these clowns admitted they have no control over, now they want credit for fixing that situation, the situation that they sang from the rooftops that they have no control over.
Is the global phenomenon, global phenomenon, global phenomenon.
Weird week for them, really. They've got that obvious nonsense, and then their usual paradox that they always seem to fall into. One where the economy has turned a corner. It hasn't. It flatlined. They're getting things back on track. They aren't. We haven't been in this much debt since the Second World War. The economy is both wonderful and there is no money for anything. Everything's great, but also We're the fastest growing economy in the G7, we're global Britain, and Britain is open for business, and we're simultaneously so broke we can barely keep the engine running. We're a deadbeat dad showboating to his mates that this is the new him, because he's got a new jacket and shoes, but everyone knows that he maxed out his card for it. We are rich and broke. We occupy those same spaces, somehow defying the laws of fiscal physics. And it kind of gets you thinking, doesn't it? It's like, if we need money to run the country and there isn't any, might there be somewhere else in government expenditure that we could, tighten up the purse strings a little bit, as a means of finding money? I guess there's some nice person up on high amongst the haves and the have-yots that could just, trim the fat a little bit. Maybe one of you could try and find the 100 billion that you've wasted since the last general election.
£100 billion has been lost by the Tory government in the last 4 years.
We're talking about docking people for their universal credit, restricting their medications, just costs that we should be able to afford if we want to run the country. Just nuts and bolts boilerplate costs. You're telling me there's not a little bit of waste somewhere that could have maybe helped with this?
A staggering £100 billion allegedly wasted by the Conservative government.
You had track and trace, HS2, COVID fraud, unusable PPE, Home Office own goals, bloody jacked up bond interest payments after the Truss and Kwarteng stuff. It's 100 billion.
100 billion.
100 billion.
Just gone.
100 billion.
Oh, God. It's just all so depressing, isn't it? And do you know what? I'll tell you what. Wasn't like this in the 60s.